Hello again YouTube and welcome back to my channel. In this video we're pulling a transmission out of a VW, but first we need to make a tool. So I'll be making this slide hammer here so I can work on an area of the transmission before I get it pulled out of the car. I'm not necessarily making this tool for this job alone, but I really needed one today, and the fastest way for me to get there was to make it. You can always go buy a slide hammer, but you can just as easily make one. So that's what I did. So I'll be attaching a bolt to the end of the long shaft here. The bolt's going to be the puller side, that's like the business end. The shaft will hold the hammer, and then I'll have a handle on the back side. I wanted to make it adjustable, so it's probably easier if I just make my own. I'm working on a 1964 to 67 split bus transmission, also referred to as a big nut transmission. And the reason I need a slide hammer is that there's a cap on the back side of the reduction box housing in between the reduction box and the spring plates. And I developed a leak on one side of my bus that progressively got worse, so it was time to actually deal with it. There's a lot of ways I've seen these caps removed. Sometimes they'll drill into the cap and like screw a bolt in there, pull it out that way, or use an oil pump puller and weld two nuts on either side of the reduction box cap, and then use a puller to pull it out. I figured a slide hammer is a versatile enough tool that I can use it in a bunch of different applications, so I might as well just make my own. Now I'm just whacking the last little bit of wonkiness out of there, making sure everything's in line, and it'll work as it should. Yeah, that looks good. So now we can start working on the handle end. So the handle will be removable. That way I can add or subtract parts to the hammer, adding different weights or different sleeves there. If I want 1 pound or, a whole bunch of meat. So there we go. There's our removable puller side. That's the nut that we'll be welding onto whatever part we're going to be pulling on. We got our hammer, and then we have the adjustable handle. So like I said, by removing the handle, I can then add or remove parts of the hammer in order to increase or decrease the weight as I see fit. Just depends on what I'm working on. Everything looks good. Now it's time to get to work. So as you can see, it looks like somebody already messed with this side. There's a bunch of remnants of weld on here, and this was the side that was actually leaking. So I'm gonna assume that they didn't do a good job of sealing it when they first put it together. First thing I wanna do is make sure that the nut is flush to the end of the puller side. I should have cleaned up the cap before I started welding. I know better. Definitely clean your material before you're going to weld. There were still remnants of like silicone and oil where the welding was. And if you listen to the weld, you can hear it's a little bit slow. So I ended up cranking up the wire feed speed, but I should have cleaned the material before I started working on this. And I definitely went a little overboard on this side. But I should have cleaned the material beforehand. Would have made it much easier. I will say make sure that you drain your reduction box before you do this. I did drain the reduction box once, but I should have left the drain plug open while I started to work. Made a pretty big mess once I got the cap off, so if you're going to be doing this, make sure you have either a drain pan underneath or you drain it or leave the drain plug open while you get to work. But nevertheless, the slide hammer is working well. Made a big mess, no big deal. And there you can see the business end, remove the cap. So like I said, make sure you drain your reduction box or you're gonna make a mess just like I did. You could always leave that drain plug open while you're working. Now we're removing the nut off of the cap so we can prep it and put it back for the next side. So now we got it off, put it back on our tool, clean it up, and get on the other side. Now the other side was not leaking, but if I'm going to do one side, I might as well do both. That's just the way I kind of do things. Doesn't make sense to let the other side wear or whatever. I'm already there, might as well do both. So as you can see, somebody already messed with this side too. There's that booger weld in the center of the cap. First thing I'm going to do is drain the reduction box housing. So I leave the drain plug open on this side. I had already drained it, but I just wanted to make sure the drain plug was open. Now I'm just cleaning off any remnants of silicone and whatever around the edge of the cap. This side of the reduction box housing has this little nub. I haven't seen it on any other big nut transmission, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove it. If I do need this, and you know why, please leave it down in the comments. But I have a couple other big nut boxes laying around, and none of them have this little nub, so there's no detent or anything on the other side of the spring plate. I'm not really sure what it's for, but like I said, if I needed that, hopefully I didn't, leave it down in the comments. Let me know how stupid I am or whatever. So first thing I did was I removed that nub. Now I'll go ahead and clean up the rest of the cap. I wanted this side to go a little bit better. And like I said, I know better. I just, sometimes you get in a rush and you just want to get the job done. This side went much easier. The only difficulty was kind of the framing. The way I have the camera set up, you're kind of just right up against the transmission and I'm wrapped around you trying to work. So make it a little bit more difficult, but I really wanted you guys to see what I was doing. So that's what I decided to do. So here you can see I'm like wrapped around the camera, wrapped around the transmission. But we got it done. Much easier that I cleaned the material. Didn't have to fumble around with the welding or add a bunch of extra beads just for security. Move you guys out of the way and I can make quick work with the slide hammer. So the slide hammer worked perfectly. Good useful tool to have, and now I don't have to make another one or go buy one. So I did clean the back end of the reduction box housing. I also prepped the cap, put silicone on there. I'll just tap it in place, make sure it's going to go in flush or like straight. I'll go ahead and grab a piece of wood and a hammer, tap it in the rest of the way. I just tap it until the cap is flush to the reduction box housing. I'm sure there's a right and wrong way to do it. This is just the way I did it. One side's done and the other. Now we can go ahead and get started on removing the transmission. So first things first, there's 2 cradle mount bolts. There are 2 bolts at the rear mount, and there's also the shift coupler there. You will also need to remove brake lines from each side. There's the hard brake lines to each brake cylinder, and the e-brake cable. So you got to do that too. So here I'm just lowering the bus. I find it much easier to remove the transmission when it's not as high off the ground. So I'm going to lower it to about level to where it would be with the tires on it. You don't have to do this. I find it easier to lower the transmission less height than to be, worried about dropping it from 2.5 feet or whatever. So here I'm just setting up a piece of wood to support the transmission so that I can start removing the bolts off the cradle mount. If you're doing this in a Bug or Ghia, you will not have the mustache bar in between the transmission. If you see just behind the axles, there's like the little body support or cross member, whatever. Not in a Bug, so in a bus it makes it a little bit more challenging to balance and pull it out. You kind of got to rock it back and forth. And you want to make sure you have tension on the jack so that you're not putting stress on these cradle mount bolts. You'll feel it. If it feels tight, either jack it up or let the jack down. It's probably pinching one end of the cradle mount. So now I have the cradle mounts removed. I already removed the front mount bolts. They're 2 15mm bolts, as well as the shift coupler. Whatever shift coupler you have, Bug and Bus are different, but you will need to remove the shift coupler. I also forgot I need to remove the clutch cable. So here we clamp down one end of the clutch cable, pull the butterfly nut off, and then you're going to want to pull the Bowden tube out of the transmission. And there you can see I have that hard brake line. So you're going to remove the brake lines, but I had already removed them since I was working on the reduction box housing. Now that we got the clutch cable out of the way, we can go ahead and remove the starter wiring really quick. 13 millimeter and one clip on the end of the starter solenoid. So you just got the wires that are run to the starter solenoid on that stud, 13 millimeter bolt, and the clip at the back end. So now that we got our brake lines out of the way, we got our e-brake out of the way, we removed the cradle mount bolts, clutch cable, starter wiring, and shift coupler, we can just start yanking it out. So as you can see here, that cross member mustache bar thing makes it a little bit more challenging, like I said, to get the balance. And I also leave my reduction box up suspended on jack stands just so it's not all flippy floppy all over the place. But now that we're removing the transmission, we can go ahead and let those down. Take your time, work smart. I do this on my own, so if you had a helper, that would make it a lot easier. But, you know, you can always do it yourself too. Just take your time, be safe, pay attention to what you're doing, and make sure you try not to drop anything. Jack stands are your friend, and that's particularly the reason why I lower the bus to like level height. Just makes it a little safer in my opinion, but do as you like. So here I'm getting the nose cone over the end of the little mustache bar cross member. There we go, back and forth, up and down. We're still hung up on the little end of the nose cone, so I'll jack it back up, clear the space, get it out. Now we're clear. So now I can go ahead and start cleaning all this up, clean up the transmission, clean up in there. If you can see that front mount, we had leaks in the nose cone. If you want to check out the other video, I did make a video about replacing the bushings inside of the nose cone. And now I'm just going to start cleaning up all this mess. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, go down, smash that like button, subscribe for more videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.